Welcome to the Successful Nurse Coach podcast. On this podcast, Laura
and Shelby, both board-certified nurse coaches, show you how to make as much money as you want in private practice as a nurse coach. Good morning and welcome back, everybody, to the Successful Nurse Coach podcast. It is Laura and Shelby here today, and we are going to be conquering a really beefy topic. So beefy that we're going to split it into 2 episodes. We're going to be talking about navigating resistance in proposals today, and next week we're going to kind of come back with some case studies and specific examples. So make sure that you tune into both episodes. But before we kick off today, I want to plant a seed in your brain. If you are a new grad or close to graduating certification, we want to invite you to our new grad workshop on May 19th at 10 a.m. Central Time. It's 90 minutes, and Laura and I will be on that workshop together, and we're going to cover just all of the stuff, all of the easy beginner things to get your business set up, and also give some space for a Q&A with Laura and I. We have mega attendance on these new grad workshops. We get close to 100, sometimes over 100 new grads each time. And so come ready, come with your questions. We're going to cover the first layer of your business and get you started off on the right foot. But hey, Laura, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing good. I'm actually really excited that another batch of grads are starting to like, it's so cool because I can tell that it's graduation time. Now that we don't work for a certification company, I forget, but I can tell it's grad time when I start getting messages. Like you can just see like it's getting close enough that people are like, wait, what? It's over? What next? Like this can't be it. What am I going to do? I have so many thoughts. I don't know what to do. So I love this season. I love our new grad workshop. I think that Shelby and I continually think back to graduating. And when we're thinking about how to serve you guys, we're always thinking of, gosh, what would have been the best information, experience, questions, like to support us during that. Mm-hmm. And we were lucky we found pretty good places. Well, you ended up quicker than I did. But they weren't nurse coaches. And so I feel like ours might even be better than we got. Yeah.
Yeah. I was telling the story literally yesterday on my mentorship call of so Laura was my peer coach in certification, and you were just like, so you going to do it? You going to start your business? You going to quit your job? And I was like, yeah, I guess I've been talking about it for like a month. I might as well start like actually figuring out what that means. And, were Laura and I able to Google it and put it together and figure it out on our own? Hell yeah. But also I would have really preferred someone giving me a condensed list and a checklist of like, do these things, then you're ready to go. And you will walk away with that after our workshop. We'll email you all of that stuff. So come hang out. Also, I see our previous clients hanging out on this new grad workshop every time. We host this workshop a few times a year. And so if you are a current client of ours, I love you, but do not come to this workshop because it is not designed for you. There is nothing on this call that you don't already know. And said with so much love, but go live your life instead of coming to this to this workshop.
It's so big too that I feel like if you are a new grad and then you end up in 100-person Zoom room, that you're less likely to ask questions. And I think that we want it to be as warm and inviting and cozy as we can make it for them. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So if you're a new grad, bring a friend, come hang out. It's free. We'll get you started in the right direction. But we're gonna hop in, like I said, to this big, juicy, fun topic of navigating resistance. I remember the first time I ever learned or kind of like was taught on this topic, with my first coach. She kind of spoke into it a little bit, but she was more on the side of if you can define their pain point and gap clear enough, you will have less resistance on the back end of your proposal. And I do think that's true. But also being new, you're probably not super great at that just yet. And these are natural questions for people to have of
Yeah.
like navigating cost. How am I going to afford that? What is my husband going to say or my wife going to say? Like these are just really normal things that can happen. So we want to prepare you, not to give you a script that you have to read because that feels gross, but just to like open that door in your brain so that when it happens, it's not about you and something that you did wrong. It's more of like, oh yeah, I was expecting this. I know exactly how to handle it. And support my client powerfully through this moment. All right. So let's jump in, Laura. Where do you want to begin?
I think what I want to start with, and I think I've said this ad nauseum, but I'll say it again just because it's so good, is that I think coming out of CERT and being coached and you're so on fire for it that you assume that all you have to do is tell somebody about it and they'll be on fire about it too. But for most people, if they've never hired any kind of coach before, to them and most people in their life, hiring a coach is unreasonable. And there is no one walking the planet except for coaches that actually have a set aside coaching budget. So, right. So like, no matter how powerful you are, how great your marketing is, how like, it doesn't really matter. We're up against these two things that most people believe hiring a coach is unreasonable and no one has a coaching budget. And so navigating resistance is just part of advocacy. It's just part of it. And I would say like maybe in the beginning, maybe 1 out of 10 calls had no resistance for me. 2 out of 10, where it was like, I don't care what it costs. I'm going to do it. And it was less about me being an awesome coach and more about them being in so much pain that they just thought that there was hope. Right.
Yeah.
So we really want to define what resistance is and just give more context to what's happening in the call as the client to what resistance is. And I mean, to hire a coach, one must be willing to go against the grain because the grain is how they've been living their lives. And so to hire you is already going against the grain. They must want the change more than money, time, or any conversation with any partner or spouse. And they must face failure themselves and willing to be uncomfortable. So that's a big ask. And most brains are going to resist that. And so we really want to normalize it. You want to kind of define a little bit more about what resistance actually is and what's happening, Shelby?
Yeah. Yeah. So resistance can be really sneaky. You will become a resistance ninja over the coming years and how to like sniff it out with your clients. But the way we've defined it here for this particular process is resistance is a normal act of the brain to keep us safe and to keep us in a known territory. It's kind of when your ego takes over. Your ego is designed to keep you safe and small and secure, even if the discomfort is going to bring you what you actually want on the other side. It's just like your brain, the alarms are going off and your brain is finding and creating any story to stay where you're at. It is a feeling you get anytime you have a little nervousness before doing something new. Resistance is what stands between us and the life we want. And we like the term navigating resistance because it implies that the client most likely will need support when it shows up. Right. And that, again, normalizing that, especially in proposal calls, right? We teach in our preceptorship course, like you are coaching into the highest version of somebody. We are tapping into their vision, not as it is right now, but as it is 3, 5, 10 years from now, and how these pivots and these changes that somebody wants to make in their life are going to pay off in the long term, what that allows them to create or experience in the long term. And then you get to the proposal and you're talking to the human in front of you as is where they are right now, right? So you just have spent all this time in dreaming wonderful la la land where everything is possible. And then you bring it back and they start making decisions as potentially they're not highest self, right? And so it's kind of like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. You have to know which version you're talking to as well. And so it's just really, really normal for clients to need support in it. And also it can be really helpful to label it of like, hey, I see that you're experiencing some resistance around this when it comes to money. Is it okay to explore that? Right. It allows you as the coach to remain neutral. You can call out the boogeyman in the room and you can tackle it as a team versus you trying to talk them into something, which never works.
Yeah. Yeah. We, for our clients, we have them record proposals with permission and we review them and we kind of do workshops on them. And what we see is that the coach is on the call. They'll be leaned in and eye contact and engaged and enthusiastic and excited when they're talking about the vision. And then the minute that and it depends, everybody's at different levels, but the minute that it starts to get real, which is the part of, cool, do you want to hear more of what it would look like to work with me professionally? The client says yes. And it's almost like their soul leaves their body. And they stop coaching because at that point, their ego is afraid that they're going to do harm. It's afraid they're going to impose their will. This is the part where I think that our nursing background, we haven't strategically found a bridge over how to be at that moment when you start talking about money. And the bridge that we want to offer for nurses specifically, which we find that's the most helpful, this is when you go into advocacy because they've already told you what they want. You already believe that you can get them there. And now you don't abandon them at their first hint of resistance. You advocate for this vision that they said to you. And to make it not weird and to not feel like you're doing high pressure sales, you just use transparency. Like Shelby said, hey, I'm noticing that you're getting a little tense. I can tell that you're a little stressed about this. This is totally normal. I do this all the time with my clients. Permission to coach you around a lot of these things and thoughts that are coming up. And I think that permission piece is the difference between a nurse coach selling and like a high pressure coach selling coaching. Like I've been on the receiving end of not having permission. And it doesn't feel great. So I think permission just opens up so much space for us to advocate and not leave our body and stay in coach mode and still be on our client's team.
Yeah, totally. Totally. And advocacy is something that most nurses, especially nurse coaches, are very passionate about. So it's easy to kind of pull previous experience of when you've advocated in the past for patients in whatever setting and pull it in here. You may have never advocated for somebody's vision before. This might be your first ever proposal that you've ever done. But you've navigated with a care team before, right? With other doctors and other nurses and with patients, et cetera, et cetera. And you can pull that experience in here as you create new experience in this moment. But
ooh, I have a vision. This is just a vision. I think of being a brand new nurse and that and this is ICU for me, but I know my ICU patient needs a med change. They are too sedated, way too sedated, in my opinion. And I'm a newbie nurse and I have to advocate. They can't talk. I'm the only person in the whole world that's advocating to their doctor of what I think they need. And so you're advocating to obviously a doctor who seems to have a higher station than you. You have them on a pedestal for a nonverbal patient that can't advocate for themselves. And like the lion that comes out in you in that moment is so foreign. I think the first time you do it and you're so surprised that you're able to. And in a proposal, the patient's talking to you up until your client is the patient talking to you up until that moment. The moment that you say the money, they fall asleep and now the ego is the surgeon. Yeah. Right. Like now we're just dealing with a different part of their brain. But we can't forget our patients' wishes. They've already told us what they want. And there's no other nurse in the room. Nobody else, nobody else. You're it. Yeah. You're the last person to advocate or the dream dies on the table.
Right.
We're so good at that. We're so good at that.
Yeah. Yeah. And even I invite you to bring in that advocacy role, right? With permission to be hey, I see that there's potentially a lot of thoughts and feelings going on right now. Can I advocate for the Laura in 5 years? Can I advocate for Laura in 10 years? because you're at a choice point right now. And
Yeah.
that can give you the permission, right? Gets your client back on you guys are now on the same team again. I think that there's just a natural dynamic that can happen with sales to where it's like very push pull, right? And if you are constantly pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling, it is really natural. It's almost like the natural law of physics for your client to dig in their heels and dig and dig and dig. Every animal on the entire planet naturally knows how to play tug of war. And we are no different, right? And if you can, I've been sold to like this before. I've been sold to like this to where they constantly ask me permission, almost to the point of annoying me, to where they're like, can I coach you around that? Can I coach you around that? I see this. Can I coach you around that? And I was like, I'm already a yes. You actually don't have to coach me around anything. But they kept asking, and it kept putting us on the same line. They're the same side of the line. And also then I think we're able to show up more fiercely too. Because if there is a time sometimes to be potentially spicy, this is where you can say things as you see it, because they can't see it the way you see it, right? As coaches, we have like a special pair of goggles to where we see things completely differently. We are removed enough from our client's story to where we can see the potential. And we owe it. We totally owe it to share that with them.
Yeah. That's actually what our job is. It's part of our job description, is to be able to advocate for our client's highest self and to work with the ego of the client's natural protection of themselves, of their self-preservation, of the hardwired part of the brain that tends to have, I think, 80% more negative thoughts than positive thoughts. Like, we're up against a little bit of a monster there. Not all the time. Sometimes it's smooth as sand. Or smooth as, that was actually like a Freudian slip there. Sometimes it's smooth as sand. Sometimes it is smooth and you don't have to over advocate. And sometimes, we've seen this with videos of some of our clients. They advocate to the very end, and legit, you can see the ego just give up. And then the higher self's like, that's it. I'm high. Yep. If I don't do it now, never going to do it. How do I pay? And it's like, oh gosh, if she had given up, if the coach had given up 30 seconds before, like, what a shame. What a shame.
Yeah. And there's like a million layers of nuance to this, which is why we encourage so much messy action in the beginning, because you learn so much in those moments. Like I have a potential client that I proposed to in the very beginning of my practice. She was also a nurse. She was going to get her master's, and y'all, I abandoned her. Like, I coached her. She's like kind of trying to figure out her life. She was a few years younger than me. She knew she didn't want to be working bedside. Nurse coaching was so new. She had like no concept of what that meant. I probably would recommend her to nurse coaching these days, but she was going back for like case management, I think, or something like that. And she straight up asked me, she's like, if you were me, what would you do? And I just gave her like surface level bullshit advice, and I left her. I just left her in the desert by herself to figure it out. And that haunted me for so long, because I got off the call and I was like, damn it. Like, because she just needed space to like talk through her thoughts. She knew what she wanted to do. She just needed a little bit of space to come meet herself in that moment. And I just left her on the edge of the cliff and was like, nice talking to you. See you later. And that was 5 years ago. And I still think about her all the time.
Oh.
And so also advocating to the very end until they tell you no. I don't care what it costs. I don't care if I can afford it. I just am not going to do this. It has nothing to do with the money. I just don't want to do the work. In order for you to sleep at night, please advocate for them.
Yeah.
Like, you'll go crazy without it.
Yeah. It'll probably still happen, and that's fine too. And that's the beauty of having a mentor, is that you don't have to have those feelings alone and be haunted alone. You can suffer together with your colleagues, because everyone will experience some version of that. But I think what I'd like to, this is going to make some of you giggle so hard too, but what I'd like to give an example of is the most common version of abandoning your client sounds something like this. You say your proposal. You say, hey, John, all right. Well, my package is $1,500 and we meet 9 times over the next 3 months. And we will be working on your fitness and getting your blood pressure down and your relationship with your wife. What do you think? And John says, oh, okay. That sounds, I'll just have to think about that, Laura. And I say, awesome, John. Just let me know.
Wrong.
I did that so many times. I did some version of that. Like, and poor John's like, I didn't say no to my dream. I'm just postponing it. Like, there's no accountability. It was just this cliffhanger. And then I'm watching for John's email for a week. And then I make up a story about it's because I'm not a good coach, or like, it's just not the way we want you to do it. We want you to be able to advocate in that moment to get them to a clear yes or clear no. And what we see new nurse coaches do is a lot of times I'll ask about the proposal. Well, how did it go? It's like, well, it just wasn't a good time. They're buying a house. Well, it wasn't just a good time. Their daughter's sick. It's just not a good time. Like, that's a really common resistance point. And then the nurse coach would be like, I just don't think they're a good fit for coaching, or they're just not ready right now. And it's like, that's so probably untrue, and just a really easy way to let yourself off the hook and to not get better at advocacy. And we don't say it like that to you. Like, we have a lot of compassion for the stress of this process and room to grow. But at some point, if you're our client, we're going to tell you that you're leaving a lot of money on the table. It's the skill that's going to make you the most money in your practice. Are you ready to start learning it? Like, it's just, there comes a time where you have to start learning it. Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. In sales, it's called overcoming objections. And I don't know about you guys, but I have no interest in overcoming objections. And so navigating resistance just implies that there is resistance that is natural for the client, and you have a compass to help them navigate. And that's your actual role in that moment. But you're not overcoming them, and it's not an objection. It's just natural resistance to change.
Yeah. Yep. Totally. And I would say, like, when you're new and you're just starting, like, this is way more common than it will be in the next 3 years or the next 5 years, because you develop rapport and resonance and relevancy with your audience, whether it's in person or online, and they better understand what you do. So people will start showing up to calls ready, right? Like, they've already worked through all the resistance in their head. And by the time they say they're scheduling calls, like, it's simpler, right? This comes in waves in our practice, to where we'll get like a season to where everyone's just like, yes. I don't care. Yes. And then, like, the past 2 weeks, probably every application call is like a 95% yes. But the spouse thing is up again. And they don't even really need me to, like, because we have so much content on our podcast about this. They know, like, they know, they just need the accountability to go have the conversation, and then have to get back to me within a few days, right? They've been pushing the conversation off because it's not the right time, or the partner's in a bad mood, or they just had a fight, or they had a low energy day, or like whatever the thing is. But, like, our application call actually is like the homework of go have that conversation. Let me know how it goes. And then I'll send you the payment to secure your spot.
Yeah.
So it's, even 5 years in, it's just so good to have the skill, this framework, this thing in your tool belt, because even had you asked me 6 months ago if I would ever have to deal with any resistance at all, I'd be like, no, Laura and I's sales process is so great. And now I'm like, well, our people are just, like, I don't know if it's something in the collective or what, but, like, there's just an energy that we get to support right now with people making decisions. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think on our next episode, we're going to go deep into each individual objection. I think there's 6 main ones we're going to develop out and really march out the specific way to navigate that kind of resistance, or that circumstance, or that thought or feeling. But one of the, I think, pivotal points for me in understanding of what we're doing in navigating resistance is that a lot of time people's brain, when it comes to make a decision, when everybody's different, but we have different types of consciousness and different ways of making big decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So, unfortunately or unfortunately, I'm unique. And I think Shelby, you're this way too, where we're like, oh, it feels good in my belly. Yes. Like, oh, like when I'm buying a car, like I'm like, oh, I like the color and I like the way I feel when I'm near it. I'm spiritually attached to this car. I'm going to buy it. I'm not like shopping for the best price or all the features. Like I make my decisions from an intuitive place. But our clients are usually, I think a lot of clients are making it from an intellectual place. They're making it from a uh, a place of, I want to make this happen, but I don't understand how. And I think that the easiest way to approach it is to remember that we have to make the decision, or they have to make the decision out of the possibility of what their life could be like, not the probability by like scanning their past and seeing what most likely is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that distinction of like possibility versus probability is so helpful in the way that we frame questions, the way that we keep bringing things back to the vision, entertaining some things from the past, but also explaining that their life is the way that it is because of all the decisions they made up until that point. Like the definition of insanity is doing the same things over and over again and expecting a different result. So if they have a vision for their life that is different, then we have to make that next decision from a place of possibility, not of probability. And that was really helpful to me. I didn't define it when I used to do it in the past. I just recently read something that helped me define that. So basically I sell magic on my calls. Like I really do. I stay in like magical vision land where everything is possible in the quantum field. And it's so much more helpful for me to keep them there as opposed to the probability that they will get what they need, the probability that they will succeed.
Yeah. Yep. And I think if you've been on an application call with me lately, I touch on both because I think a lot of our nurses are intellectual. And if I think back about how I used to make decisions and the questions I was asking when I was hiring coaches, it was that of like, what can I expect?
Yeah.
Like, this is so foreign. It's like I'm looking at a forest and it's filled with fog and I'm trusting you to get me through it. Right. But like, it's all just so, I have no frame at all. And so they're like genuine questions that had nothing to do with their ability as a coach, like I was unsure. And so that can be helpful for me sometimes whenever I get asked on calls, we're like, well, what are the chances that I'm going to return my investment? And I'm like, dude, I can't. I like can show you some numbers. And I do, right? We share numbers all the time to just like give some context of what it can look like, but I can't guarantee because I don't know what the next year holds for you. But this is what's possible. This is what can happen. This is how we're going to support you through it. And then kind of like once we like comfort the intellectual brain a little bit, then we can flip back into like, what if you completely return your investment and potentially triple it? What does this time next year look like? What do you want to create from that spot? How does the vision get bigger, bolder, braver? Is there anything else that you haven't mentioned yet that I can hold for you? And again, I just really want to drive home of like, their resistance is not about you 99% of the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's about them. It's about them.
Yeah. We probably have time just before we go end. I think we could go into the two types of obstacles that people will have to hiring you as a nurse coach. And the one category is circumstances. And the second category is thoughts and feelings. And the cool part is that we can easily coach around either of those. They're totally solvable most of the time. I was listening to one of my mentors talk about this. And she was like, people ask me, is it ever like, when is it just not okay to sell somebody coaching? I think the only hard, fast rule for me, like them being in debt is totally not an obstacle for me. Like I just, that's not an obstacle for me. Because of my new relationship with debt, my understanding of debt, and my belief that coaching can help people get out of debt. But if hiring me is going to cause, and Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if hiring me is going to cause more anxiety over not having a place to live, not having food to eat, like cause actual distress in their life circumstances, then that's the only time that I think we can say, hey, this may not be a great time, and maybe help them explore some free resources if they really still need support. But unless they're at that, like in that much of a dire strait, I still believe with all of my heart that I'm the best path for them, like the best way for them to spend their money, regardless of what their problem is, because coaching has changed who I am. Coaching has made things possible for me that could have never been possible for me. So I believe, like, I'm a 10 out of 10 believing in coaching, which is why I'm able to do that. And for you guys, if you've just been through CERT, maybe you're 7 months in the coaching game, maybe you're not a 10 out of 10 yet. Like you think it's cool. You had some cool calls. You had some major shifts, but like how you're just not a 10 out of 10 yet, then that's something to focus on that will really help with this process. How do we get you to a 10 out of 10 in believing in coaching? I mean, how would you say if you had a nurse coach saying, I kind of believe in coaching, like what would be your advice for them?
Coach more.
Yeah.
There's like 5 questions I would want to ask them to elaborate, but it would just be coach more, get more proof that coaching is it. Because if you don't believe in coaching, or we're not like working on your belief in coaching, and you don't believe that a 10 out of 10 is possible, then you shouldn't be a coach.
Yeah.
Right? Like selling would feel so icky and so just bleh. So, yeah.
Or my other advice is be super coachable and let your coach coach you.
Yeah.
Like let your life change as a result of like be so ultra coachable that you become the proof that leads to the belief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Let's mention one more thing here before we wrap, is how, and we've kind of spoken to it, but how to know if it's resistance or if they are not coachable. Like their mindset, they are just fixed and there's not space to weasel in there and create any wiggle room. Any red flags for you on if someone is not coachable?
If they are combative or argumentative within the coaching call.
Yeah.
Huge red flag. Or defensive. A little bit of defensiveness is fine. But within the agreements of the coaching container, as long as those have been spoken appropriately, then really that's a violation of the agreement. So I think anytime the violation of the agreement and they become argumentative or combative, then I have to pause and take a moment there and see. Yeah.
So that's a big red flag. Also, I would say that if they are just not willing to shift their framework in any way, right? It's just nope. I can't. Doesn't mean they can't be coachable in 6 months. It just likely means that they're not uncomfortable enough yet to see that they need to embrace change. And coaching from that place won't be productive. You're just going to like run the wheel around and around and around. They need like their own separate aha moment, probably outside in the real world, to have a light bulb go off. Again, that's not wrong. It's just, don't die on the hill if it's not meant to land. But most things are resistance. And the 6 things that we're going to cover next week are: I can't afford coaching. I need to think about it. I have to talk to my partner or my spouse. I don't have enough time, or I don't have childcare. And we're also going to tackle debt as well. Like I have debt that I need to pay off first. So come back next week. We're going to like workshop style, go through all of those things, our thoughts and feelings about them, and give you most likely some language on how to just continue to open up the conversation to support your clients in those moments. It's going to be a really juicy free training that we're going to have here on the podcast next week.
Yeah, totally. And listen to it over and over again, because I feel like I have to do that. I know a lot of our clients in our course will listen to things 2, 3, 4, 5 times and just let it marinate. So hopefully these are 2 digestible 30-minute podcasts you can note, and before proposals, you can go for a walk around the block, listen to it, and you'll be in the right frame to nail any resistance and advocate like you can for your client. Awesome. All right, Shelby, any last words or are we out of here till next week?
I just want to say thank you to everybody who has started downloading the podcast. I know I asked for you guys to do that a few episodes ago, and our downloads went from like anywhere from 10 to 100 downloads an episode to like over 500, pushing sometimes 700, 800. So, I don't really know what that means in the long game, but I just appreciate you guys honoring my ask. And it's cool to see those numbers on the back end, and we appreciate you tuning in every week. So we'll see you next week for one, and then come hang out with us in the Facebook group. We're happy to continue the conversation in there. We'll see you next week, everybody. Bye.
Bye.